Alright, PlayStation Repair Augusta back again with another video. I've been talking about this one for a little while and just now got to a point where I could really kind of move things around and show what it was that I had modified on the new scope stand that I got. I don't know, it's probably been about 2 months now that I've had this. I bought this on Aliexpress from a seller. They've got a long-standing record. They also have a store that they sell from individually, and they've got pretty good reviews. So I figured I'd give it a try and see what comes out of it. I'm I'm not unimpressed, but I'm not overly impressed. I have some concerns about whether or not the camera is truly 60 frames per second, but really, for what I'm using it for, it doesn't actually matter. The camera that you see connected to it is actually the old camera from my Amscope. I'm just pulling this camera off. And I put the new camera, because it is the HDMI compatible, I put that on the Amscope just because either it's too hard for me or I've just gotten out of practice of using strictly the screen, and I like to be able to get that kind of direct view feel of looking down the scope. It just seems to be a little bit more precise. And so to give the best video of what's going on, I put the HDMI camera into the Amscope. So that's where this one's been. And the old USB version, and the reason why I wasn't able to do videos a long time ago, as well as I guess just laziness of getting it all together, is that when I got started and I bought this camera, and anyone that knows the models, this is an MU500, and this was fairly new when I got it. This is 14 frames per second. I mean, it's like watching a stutter step video or a claymation where, you know, you're just kind of bebopping along the screen rather than a steady stream, which is what that HDMI camera gives me. I've also said in previous videos that that's not going to be the final camera. It was just what came with the stand, and I was interested to get the stand. In hindsight, I think I might have done better to just go ahead and upgrade to, what is it, like a $600 camera that is the 20 megapixel USB 3.0. You're supposed to be able to get 60 frames per second through that USB 3.0 because it's capable of, what is it, 10 or 12 gigabits of transmit. To not bore anyone with the stats of monotonous electronic information, it's just a more modern piece of technology that has a higher throughput capability, which supports the additional data that comes from 1080p, 60 frames per second, and possibly even, I don't think that one's 4K, but there are some 4K cameras out there, and again, you need a lot of throughput to be able to pump that from a camera to a computer. And as I've said in a previous video, you need even more processing power on the computer to be able to encode that stuff in real time and be able to do other things on the computer without having crashes or lags. So getting back to what this video is all about, now that you've kind of gotten the reiteration of my different camera setups, why I chose what I chose, and how they evolved over time, what interested me about it was the fact that how you see it now. I mean, I can just have, and I had to make some modifications, and I'll go over it with you, what I did, but check this out. Look at how versatile this is. I can go up under and go that from under shot, overhead shot, sideways shot, at an angle shot for looking under VGAs and wanting to display that information on screen. This is where it's at, and I guess that's why this isn't considered a microscope camera, and trying to use it as a microscope camera just was kind of finicky. it didn't feel natural, and it felt like it was going to make things slower and possibly cause more issues in the process that would then need to be fixed. So I switched back, and like I said, I swapped out the cameras. But when I looked into not what the seller was calling it, but what general searches in the industry that sells this equipment called this an inspection stand. And it started to make sense that it's not good for microscope and doing the rework. But what it is good is for general inspection when you put items underneath it, or if you're working on the microscope and you want to have that stable point of reference, like for looking under the boards, or if you're doing a reflow profile and you want to see if those balls are melting, you can angle this the way you need, and then you just lock it down. Not only do I have the rotation there, I have this. I have the ability, just like with a microscope stand, to do that kind of finer adjustment for, what axis is that? X-axis, I think? No, would this be Z-axis? I think technically it's considered the up and down as your Z-axis, and X and Y would be like this, so Z would be this. But we also have another Z-axis. Oh, there's actually, and I thought this was smart, there's I forget what these are called, but it is a little, just a circular tube that's kind of like a stop, so I can set my position and then lock it in. It would have been nice if there was some markings here. I guess I could actually have taken that to the machine shop and had them mark it up for me. But once you lock in that reference, then you can do like this. So you've got a lot of different maneuverability or points of maneuver. And I've got it on an angle here, so it doesn't want to go down. I did that just because, in fact, let's pull this out. Alright. So now it goes up and down much easier because it's not sitting on that angle. But let's say I want to, let's see if we can make this where, I don't think you can see that circle from here, but I just bring it up. Let's do it this way. And I'm going to lock it in right up underneath it. Then I can let go of this, and I can tighten it here. So, I mean, they did put a lot of thought into how to put this together. But what they did not solve was this problem. This was the biggest modification. Like, I had to flip this from on this side because for some dumb reason that made sense to them, that it should be over here where it was constantly bumping into this. I don't know what they were thinking, but to me that's just stupidity. Flipping it around was super easy though. It didn't take much effort at all. However, this furthered my doubt in the quality of engineers that are hired by, and again, the seller doesn't make this. They buy this from someone else, and they probably don't use this as much as they try to make people believe they do, so they may not understand the weak points. But whoever actually manufactured this should have understood that this makes no sense. So the threads that you see on here that this are attached to, the machine shop, and actually you can't see it. I'll tell you what, let's just make this video legit. We're going to back this out, and we're going to unthread this unit. Alright, so we've got our camera. We've now set that down. So let's see if we can look at this. Let's go ahead. We're going to take this off. This second set of threads did not exist. Nice, big, very good threads in comparison to when, if we zoomed in and looked at these are not kind of like chewed up. They're not rough and looked like they just didn't have a lot of care when they were machined. The threads that were originally here, just these, what is this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.5 threads. There's not quite a 6th thread there. Let's see what we got on the new one. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 10.5 to 11 threads. And again, we need a little bit more play here so that we can spin this back on it, because we want to be able to back it off so that we can move our microscope around. The problem that we had was the manufacturer, the designer of this device, thought that this would get the job done. And let's see if we can show this in the video. I might have to get the microscope. But there's a little thumb screw hole here, and this thumb screw hole has, and it's still in there, it has the little locking screw, and its job was to kind of set and lock this in place on these threads. And it did so by actually screwing down through the hole and then butting up against those threads, and you tighten it, basically destroying your threads. And even still, it did not have enough locking force to support the weight, because this is heavy. I'd have to weigh it to know exactly how much it is. But when this is sitting in there, if you put it at the right angle, and let's say it's like this, well, the weight now is on that lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. So it's going to force itself through gravity to unlock. And that's what it tried doing. The very first time I set this up, I realized that's a problem. It's never going to work. It almost slammed the camera down into the table. Luckily, there was, I think I had cotton swabs on the other side for whatever reason. And luckily, it hit that. And it still had a nice thud to it. So if that would have slapped the table surface, who knows what kind of damage it could have done to the camera. So I'm a little disappointed in the seller that they haven't caught this earlier, and that they're selling this to people like this when it has a potential hazard to cause damage to their equipment. So let's look at how we fix this by simply, and the seller could certainly do this, but we're going to butt it up, and all we're doing is just going straight to that back stop that it already had, and that's where the other side is. Let's go ahead. Here we have this groove. I don't know, yeah, you can see that in the video. There's a flat groove, which I thought, again, very smart on the engineer's plan to make that, because it gives you a true surface to butt up against, that you can ensure that you've got, one, a stable kind of tension there, and that you're aligned properly. And then, okay, so this is, and that was the other thing, is to get it to where it locked without this thumb wheel, you had to really put it all the way at its, woo, there's your demonstration of what it does. Luckily, we were high enough. So, in order to lock it with that set screw, you would have to come all the way back. You wanted it to tension up against that wall. And now our camera is at a permanent, like, it's at a 3-point stance. And that just doesn't work. So it took me all of about 5 seconds to think of what I needed to get to fix it. And luckily I have someone that works in the machine shop industry that I could send it to without them trying to tell me this would be hundreds of dollars to have done. So now I don't have to worry about it butting up against that surface. This is butted up and tensioned against the back wall. This has no tension and is ready to spin, and we're not using that set screw at all. So now I take my thumb wheel, and I didn't imagine that it needed a thumb wheel this big, and even the person that set this up said, you know, probably could have used a smaller thumb wheel, but I wanted to make sure you could get good force on it. And that's the difference between having good machine shops and those that will just get things done, because they could have gone smaller and this might not have worked as well. But I think that thumb wheel is the perfect size. It allows me to get really good tension against the surface, and once you back against that surface, it creates again that same thing that we had before, where we were trying to tighten down against that wall, but we've got a bigger surface area, a better locking bite to it, and now I can position this any way I want. If I wanted to not have it in the straight up, woo, that's how good it's locked on there. I got to grab it from a different way. Okay, so if I didn't want to have it in the straight up and down position, I could back it off even further and lock my thumb wheel, and we're still good. We're not going anywhere. You saw it earlier without this. Now, I didn't have the set screw set, so it's a little bit of a loaded comparison, but trust me, it would have done the exact same thing with the set screw in, because that's what it did to me when I very first set this up. But since having this adaptation, adapter, whatever we want to call it, putting this thumb wheel on and being able to lock it down, I mean, I can bump into this, and I could probably eventually get it to unlock and back off. If I wanted to make it even more secure, I could put a bit of a silicone grommet in there, and what that would do is give that kind of absorbing force, so as you tighten it, it would push in, and then that silicone is going to try to expand back and create an even bigger lock. Or I could just put a locking nut in there, kind of like you see at a parts store. I'd have to find one big enough for this particular size, which is fairly large. I'd have to say that's probably a 1-inch diameter. So we'd need a 1-inch internal diameter for the locking nut. I think it'd be easier to find some silicone that is thin enough that could just have a hole cut out and go in there and create an additional means of pressure. So this kind of demonstrates what had to be done to get this in working order. Now I'm using my original light because the light that I got with the replacement camera that went to this one and does actually attach better to the lens mechanism. Unfortunately, this one was not bright enough for the camera that came with this package. So I had to switch these because the camera, or the light mechanism, this LED light up for inspection cameras, this is not bright enough. It actually doesn't get as bright as the one that they sent me, which is nice. They sent a really high quality one, but they also did so because the light sensor in the camera that they're sending does not absorb light as well, or low light as well, and render a picture. So it needed that higher luminosity of their LED little light. I forget what these are called. There's a name for them and I can't think of it. So that was no big deal. Plus it's nice to get an even brighter light because you can dim it if you need to, but you can't make something brighter than its maximum brightness. So getting one that was a little bit better than this was nice. There's some $120 versions of this that one day I may want to pick one up of, and it allows you to like kind of change lights in different patterns. You get almost control over individual LEDs, but they have configured pattern settings to it, and you just press the different functions and it will turn on different patterns, different colors, different lighting. I don't know if the different colors are really necessary. However, there is something with a dark light, and that dark light will kind of luminesce the parts of a chip where you can't see their text. So chips that are impossible to read can become possible under this light. I haven't found where I buy that light from yet, and I think probably I could just buy the LEDs. It's not I don't think it's a black light. It's a certain spectrum of a black light, I believe, or it is a completely different spectrum outside of black light. In fact, now I've decided I'm going to get more information on that, and we'll figure it out together in another video. But to go back to this one, I've kind of jumped around and talked all about cameras in different settings. But again, the main purpose of this video was to show, I think this is a great stand. If you have a use for it on your table, you can certainly pick one up on Aliexpress. Just be advised that you're probably going to need to make some modifications to it, and you may be able to tap this yourself if you don't want to send it to a machine shop. Getting this washer head, or sorry, not washer head, thumb screw, I don't know if that you could make on your own, not without at least a little bit of machining skills on your own. Finding that part, I have no idea. If somebody knows where you can find these and then tap them yourself, I'm good. I don't need it anymore. But for those that may want to try to make that attempt, maybe you already have this stand and you've been trying to solve this problem for ages. This is how you get it done. So you can either send it to a machine shop near you, or you can make that attempt yourself. But if you do this, I guarantee you will not have any more problems with this stand. And so far, I'm loving it. I've used it a little bit. It is a bit of a pain to do the under the BGA profile. I got to figure out if maybe I need to make some lens changes for that, and if so, that's not a big deal. However, I'm under the impression it should work with what I got. I just need to figure out the right mix for it. Oh, and I did forget to show this one last thing, and that is one other degree of change we can make here. I tightened that down a little bit too much. So the ability to come out this way. One other point I will say about this, though, is you have to be careful about how you align your weight distribution. Right now I have this propped up with, I'm using this multi-tape dispenser from Uline. It's nice and heavy. And if it wasn't for that, they use this steel plate and it looks like it's super durable. But when you flip it over, it is a really thin press of metal. So it has almost no weight. In fact, yeah, if I take that counterbalance off, it's tipping. Now it is designed to be in the other direction, which does make it a little bit more stable. But the problem is, at least from my experience, myself and watching other people's videos online, is that we all use a upper shelf. Where I'm tapping my hand here, there's an upper shelf. And so having this on the bench with that upper shelf does not work with the way that the manufacturer intended. They wanted it to be here, and they wanted you to work on that plate surface area. I'm not doing that. I may one day come up with a different mount, especially when I get the new desk, because I'm going to have a sliding track for my microscope. So if I could make this slide on that track as well, that'd be really neat. However, until then, I just flipped it around like this, and then I use a counterbalance on the back end to make sure that it doesn't go away, and that allows me to push that plate all the way up underneath my upper shelf, and it keeps my desk area free and clear so that I can do who knows what with it. But as you've heard me mention, is a desk quickly gets messy, you quickly run out of space. So having that big front plate in there, I think they could come up with a better way to do that. And I'm sure you could probably just strap some weight underneath it. You could also tap holes in it at the very back and then mount it onto the desk if you wanted to. So there's a million different ways to solve a very, very small problem. That's something anyone could do on their own. This thumb screw issue, I couldn't solve it on my own. I knew what I needed to fix it, but I had to get the help of a professional to get it done. So other than that, I think that covers it for the stand. If you like this video, if you like this microscope, feel free to go ahead and put something in the comments section. Ask your questions if you have any about it. Go ahead and click that subscribe button if you feel like you've learned something in today's video and would like to learn more. If you do have any questions for me, as I've already said, put them in the comments section. I will get back to them as soon as possible. If you don't hear back from me, don't get angry. Just send a reminder, or if you need to, reach out to me through email by going to PlayStationRepairAugusta.com, and I will get back to you as quickly as possible. That's all for today. I don't know if we're going to do any other videos, but there will be more videos before the end of the week. Take care and see everyone soon.